as we come to the end of movie reviews, I think it's only fitting that we perhaps look at some of the favourite films of Steve Legg, who sadly passed away this week.
Yeah, I mean, I have cried buckets this week, Nathan, and I know there are more tears to come. I know there are.
Yeah.
Um, so our great friend and friend of Pure 24/7, and obviously the creator and editor of Sorted magazine, Steve Legg, passed away this week. We had him for a year longer than we thought we were going to. Steve was one of the most generous, kindest, warm-hearted, warm-hearted, lovely men I have ever met. I cannot speak too highly of Steve. He was a great evangelist. He loved the Lord. His gigs, he did comedy and magic gigs, and he used to say, "If it's not funny, it's still magic." I can hear him saying that. Steve was a just one of the most wonderful person I have met in my 62 years on this planet, and I am missing him so much. I can't begin to tell you. And I owe Steve a debt for many reasons, and I know Pure owes Steve a debt as well. And we want to pay tribute to this wonderful, wonderful man. So 6 years ago, I met Steve properly. I'd met him before, but I met him properly. We became friends at Spring Harvest, and Steve needed somebody to write film reviews for Sorted magazine, and I was writing film reviews for another publication. And I told him that I'm a movie obsessive, and I told him about my, 3,000 DVDs and so on that I have. And Steve said, "Andy, would you write film reviews for Sorted?" Now, what I didn't know at the time was that he was about to make my boyhood dream come true. Because when I was a boy and obsessed with movies, and I've been obsessed with movies all my life, I'd wanted to be quoted on a movie poster. I'd wanted to see on a movie poster, "This film is brilliant, Andy Godfrey." What I didn't know when I said yes to Steve that I would write for Sorted was that he had good contacts with all the film distribution companies in this country. That means that we at Sorted get invited to these press screenings and sometimes premieres. And I didn't know that. And Steve said, "Oh, you'll start to go to press screenings." What? This is my boyhood dream come true, to be sitting in a room with other journalists watching a film that's not going to come out for 2 months. And when you go to a press screening, they always ask you for your thoughts afterwards. They've shown you the film for free. They ask you just to email back and tell them what you thought of the film. I did tell them what I thought of Wolf 2000 or 2000 Wolf. The result of that is that over the last 6 years, we've had Sorted quoted on 13 movie posters and trailers and Blu-ray covers. And I've got them all printed up in a folder. And I showed them to one of the last things I ever did was I showed Steve the folder, and he was so thrilled to see Sorted being quoted on movie posters. I remember, and in fact, one of the films was a film called Fall. It's a film that came out about 2 years ago. It's my favourite film of the year of that year. It was about two girls who climb a tower in the middle of nowhere. This very old rickety radio tower, 2,000 feet up. They get to the top. What happens? The ladder falls away. How are they going to get down? It's an absolutely sensational film. I gave it 5 stars, and much to my great delight, when the poster came out, it said 5 stars, Sorted magazine on the poster. And Steve loved that film as well. Steve absolutely loved that film, and he was so thrilled that he got that poster, and he had it blown up and he had it framed for me. And if anybody's watching the video of this, you can see it to the right of me on the wall. That was a present from Steve Legg, and that's never moving. That's not going anywhere. They can demolish this house. That's staying put. Because Steve had that done for me. He was so kind. That was who Steve was. Steve was the most generous, kind, caring, sincere, lovely, and funny man I have ever met. And he had that poster done for me of this film Fall. Steve's favourite films were the Die Hard movies. Steve loved Die Hard. He loved Die Hard 2. I think he liked Die Hard 2 more than he loved Die Hard 1. And when we went to events together, Steve would bring, as you know, T-shirts and hoodies for sale. And this year, he had made up a Die Hard T-shirt and a Die Hard hoodie. And in fact, it sold really well to commemorate that film, because Steve loved Die Hard and he loved Die Hard 2. He loved action movies. There was a film came out a couple of years ago called Bullet Train, and I remember leaving the cinema and actually phoning Steve as I was leaving the cinema, saying, "Steve, you got to go and see this. You'll love it." And he did go and see it, and he did love it. Um, I don't know what else to say about Steve. I mean, Steve was just. There are many, many people in heaven who I hope he's meeting right now, who were there because Steve told them about Jesus, who wouldn't have been there if Steve hadn't told them about Jesus. Heaven has become a funnier place. I mean, in my obituary, I said that Steve, my friend, do what you do best with the angels and the good Lord. Tell them some jokes. You know, heaven's become a much funnier place. I mean, Steve was hilarious. I think my favourite Steve Legg line of all was he would stand on stage and he would say, "I used to do a lot of work in prisons," and he'd point at a random guy in the audience and say, "Good to see you again, sir." You know, and I love Steve. I love Steve dearly. I know you guys did at Pure.
Yeah.
He was loved at the Gathering. He was loved at Spring Harvest. He was loved at New Wine. He was loved by the many churches all around the world. He travelled over 1,000,000 miles because he would keep a record, which is, you know, incredible. I've travelled a bit. I've travelled to Kazakhstan and back, and Nicaragua and a few places. I haven't kept a record of how many miles. Steve kept a record. Steve travelled over 1,000,000 miles telling people about Jesus, you know. And so now all of our thoughts and our love and our prayers must turn to Becca, his wonderful wife. I mean, Becca has just been incredible through Steve's illness, through the whole time he's been diagnosed. I mean, she first spotted the melanoma, the little bit of cancer on his foot, and set this whole thing in motion. All our love, thoughts, and prayers must turn to Becca, to the girls. Steve lived an extra year longer than he should have done. He got to see his granddaughter born, which was fantastic. He got to help you guys at Pure. He got to help me launch my book. If anybody's got my book, he wrote the foreword. I'm working on a sequel. It's obviously, there is no doubt about it, it's going to be dedicated to Steve. Keep an eye open for the next Sorted, because obviously, you know, you will see Steve just on, you know, Sorted with Steve's baby. So yeah, so Steve's favourite films were the Die Hard films, and in fact, I am planning this evening just to put my feet up and watch Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 2, as a kind of tribute to Steve, because he was just. But I mean, what else can we say, Nathan? He was Steve Legg, and he was just the most wonderful friend. You know, he would text me out of the blue some days and just say, "Hi, buddy, how you doing?" You know, maybe I hadn't heard from him for a couple of days or a week. Suddenly a text would arrive out of the blue. He cared, he loved. He was most brilliant. I mean, I'm an evangelist. I've been preaching for 50 years, just under 50 years. Steve was the most brilliant communicator. He had certain standards, you know. I mean, the books and the magazines. You were with us at the Gathering, where we had books and magazines on the table. They had to be piled in a certain way. They had to be dead straight. You know, he said he was very fussy, and he was. You know, the T-shirts that we were selling all had to be folded in a particular way. You know, and if they weren't, he would come around and refold them. You know, but that was just Steve, and he was a brilliant communicator, brilliant magician, absolutely incredible. Member of the Magic Circle, film critic as well. He loved his movies, and of course, above and beyond anything else, he loved his family and his Lord, and he's with his Lord now. And I look forward to seeing him again one day. And I hope and pray that he is meeting all those people that are in heaven who wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him, perhaps, you know. So God bless you, Becca, if you hear this, and the family. All our love, thoughts, and prayers are with you. And we miss Steve, but you're missing him more. So we're praying for you. And thank you, Nathan, for letting me just share my memories of Steve. Steve was just the best friend anybody could ever wish to have, and you and I knew him, and what a privilege to call Steve Legg our friend.